The champagne glasses on the table caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Riverside Conference Center. I sat at the head table, my hands folded in my lap, trying to smile as my colleagues of 40 years gathered around me. Today was supposed to be a celebration. My retirement party. The end of 4 decades at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Portland. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt invisible. The room smelled of catered salmon and fresh flowers, the kind of elegant arrangement someone from HR had probably ordered without asking what I liked. I would have preferred daisies. Simple, cheerful daisies. But after 40 years of being the person who remembered everyone else's preferences, no one had thought to ask about mine. "Barbara," my assistant, Maria, touched my shoulder. "Are you okay? You look a million miles away." "I'm fine," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. Just taking it all in. That wasn't entirely true. I was watching the entrance, waiting for my daughter Rachel and her family to arrive. They'd driven up from Eugene that morning, and my grandson Ethan had been particularly excited about attending. At 11 years old, he'd never been to a grown-up party before, as he called it. I'd told Rachel it might be boring for him, but Ethan had insisted. "Grandma, I want to see where you worked all these years," he'd said on the phone last week. "Plus, I'm bringing my iPad. I have a surprise for you." Children and their surprises. I'd smiled and told him that would be lovely. The double doors opened, and I saw them. Rachel looked beautiful in a navy dress, her husband Tom beside her in a suit. And there was Ethan, my serious-faced grandson with his unruly brown hair and those intelligent eyes that reminded me so much of his late grandfather. He was carrying his iPad in a protective case, clutching it like it contained something precious.
The path to
They made their way to my
isn't
table,
always linear,
and I stood to embrace
but with
them.
dedication
"Mom,
and
this
clarity,
place is gorgeous,"
you can navigate
Rachel said,
any challenge.
looking around at the venue. The company had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers, white linens, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. "It's very nice," I agreed, though I'd have been just as happy with cake in the conference room. Ethan hugged me tight. "Hi, Grandma. You look pretty." "Thank you, sweetheart." I smoothed his hair, which immediately sprang back up. "I'm so glad you're here." He looked around with wide eyes, taking in the crowd of about 100 people, the servers circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres, the podium with a microphone set up near the front. "Is that where people are going to make speeches about you?" he asked. "I suppose so," I said. The thought made my stomach turn slightly. I'd never liked being the center of attention. Tom shook my hand warmly. "Barbara, congratulations! 40 years. That's incredible." "Thank you, Tom." I gestured for them to sit. "I saved seats for you right here." As they settled in, I noticed Ethan kept glancing at his iPad, then at the podium, then back at his iPad. He had that look he got when he was thinking hard about something. The next hour passed in a blur of well wishes and reminiscing. Colleagues I'd worked with for decades came by to share stories. Janet from accounting remembered when we'd stayed until midnight fixing a budget crisis in 1998. David from HR recalled how I'd organized the company's first charity drive. Margaret from reception reminded me of the time I'd talked a furious client down from filing a lawsuit, saving the company millions. I'd done a lot in 40 years. Started as a secretary in 1985, worked my way up to office manager, then to senior operations coordinator. I'd streamlined processes, managed crises, trained dozens of new employees. I'd been the backbone of Morrison & Associates, the person who kept everything running smoothly while others got promoted above me. I'd never minded too much. I liked my work. I liked solving problems. I liked knowing that I was essential, even if I wasn't always recognized. But that was about to change, apparently. The CEO, Kenneth Morrison, approached the podium. He was 58, tall and silver-haired, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from being born into ownership. His grandfather had founded the company. Kenneth had inherited it at 35 when his father retired. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice booming through the microphone, "thank you all for being here today to celebrate Barbara Chen's retirement." Polite applause. I smiled and nodded. "Barbara has been with Morrison & Associates for 4 decades, Kenneth continued. 4 decades of dedication, of showing up every day, of being a reliable presence in this company. His words were nice enough, but they felt hollow. Reliable presence. That's what I'd been reduced to, a fixture, like the coffee maker or the filing cabinets. I remember when Barbara first started, Kenneth said, warming to his topic. I was just a kid then, learning the business from my father. Even back then, I could see that Barbara was special. She had a way of keeping things organized, of making sure nothing fell through the cracks. I caught Rachel's eye. She gave me an encouraging smile, but I could see the slight furrow in her brow. She knew me well enough to sense my discomfort. Over the years, Kenneth went on, this company has grown tremendously. We've expanded from a small regional firm to a nationally recognized consultancy. And so much of that growth has been possible because of the foundation we built, the systems we put in place. I noticed the pronoun. I'm particularly proud of the Morrison method, he said, and my breath caught. Our signature project management system that we implemented company-wide in 2010. It revolutionized how we operate, improved our efficiency by 35%, and became a model that we've since licensed to other firms. The Morrison method. Named after him. Created by me. That system was the result of years of observation and innovation, Kenneth said. Understanding what worked, what didn't, and designing a better way forward. It's now a cornerstone of our success, generating significant revenue as a licensed product. My hands gripped the edge of my napkin under the table. Rachel had gone very still beside me.
In my time leading this department,
she knew
I've
about
learned
the
that
Morrison
true
method.
innovation often
She
comes
knew
from
I'd
unexpected
spent 3
places.
years developing
It's
it,
about empowering your
documenting
team to
every
explore
process,
new ideas.
writing the training manual, implementing the rollout. Barbara, Kenneth said, turning to look at me with a benevolent smile. You've been here to see this company transform. You've been part of that transformation. And as you retire today, I want you to know that your years of service haven't gone unnoticed. You've been a valuable member of the Morrison team. Valuable member. Not the creator, not the innovator. A member. The applause was louder this time. People stood. I stood too. Automatically, my smile frozen on my face. Kenneth gestured for me to join him at the podium. I walked up on shaking legs. He shook my hand for the cameras. Someone from marketing snapping photos for the company newsletter. I was handed an engraved crystal clock, the traditional retirement gift. The irony wasn't lost on me. 40 years, and they gave me something to mark the time I'd given them. Would you like to say a few words? Kenneth asked, still holding the microphone but not quite offering it to me. I opened my mouth, not sure what would come out. Thank you? For what? For taking credit for my work? For 40 years of being overlooked? I started. Excuse me? A clear young voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. Ethan was standing beside our table, his hand raised like he was in school. Yes? Kenneth said, confused. And who are you, young man? I'm Ethan Chen, my grandson said clearly. Barbara's grandson. May I say something? The room rippled with surprised murmurs. This wasn't on the program. Kenneth looked at me, then back at Ethan. Well, I suppose if your grandmother doesn't mind. Actually, Ethan interrupted, and I saw Rachel start to rise as if to stop him, but something in his expression made her pause. It's not for my grandma. It's about the Morrison method. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kenneth's smile faltered. The Morrison method? Kenneth said carefully. That's very sweet, young man. But this isn't really the time for... I have a presentation, Ethan said, holding up his iPad. I've been working on it for 3 weeks. Can I show it, please? I was frozen at the podium, my heart hammering. What was he doing? Kenneth looked uncertain, probably weighing the optics of refusing a child at his grandmother's retirement party. I suppose a few minutes wouldn't hurt. Does someone have a way to connect his device to the projector? The AV tech, a young man named Chris, hurried over. Within moments, Ethan's iPad was connected to the large screen behind the podium. Thank you, Ethan said politely. He tapped his iPad, and the screen came to life. The title slide read, The Real Story of the Morrison Method, a Timeline. My breath stopped. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Tom leaned forward, eyes wide. Kenneth's face had gone pale. Now, wait just a minute. I'll be quick, Ethan promised. He tapped to the next slide. In 2007, Ethan read in his clear, serious voice, My grandma was promoted to Senior Operations Coordinator, according to this email I found. He tapped, and an email appeared on the screen. Kenneth Morrison told her, quote, "Barbara, our processes are a mess. We need someone to figure out how to streamline everything. You're the most organized person here. Can you take this on?" The email was clearly visible. Kenneth's signature at the bottom. Dated the 15th of March, 2007. "Where did you get that?" Kenneth demanded, stepping toward Ethan. "My grandma's email archive," Ethan said calmly. "She backs everything up to the cloud. She's very organized. She let me use her computer to help her clean up her files before she retired." That was true. Last month, when they'd visited, I'd asked Ethan to help me organize my digital files. I'd wanted to delete 40 years of accumulated emails. I had no idea he'd been reading them. "Ethan," I said weakly from the podium. "Sweetheart, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, Grandma," he said, looking at me with those serious eyes, "because nobody else is going to." He turned back to the screen. "Next slide." From 2007 to 2010, Ethan continued, my grandma sent Mr. Morrison 247 emails about the new system she was developing. I counted them. She sent updates every week. She included flowcharts, process maps, efficiency calculations, and implementation plans. Slide after slide appeared, email headers, timestamps, subject lines like Week 12 progress report, new PM system, and revised framework for approval and final implementation timeline. All from me, all to Kenneth. "Here's my favorite one," Ethan said, and his voice had gained strength. He was enjoying this now, I realized. My sweet, shy grandson was enjoying holding this room's attention. This is from January 2010. My grandma wrote, "Kenneth, I've completed the final version of the project management protocol framework.
Welcome.
I've attached
I'm
all
glad you're here to learn
documentation,
about this new
training
initiative.
materials, and rollout
I'm confident
plans.
it will bring
This
positive
represents
changes
3 years
to our
of research
community.
and development. I recommend we begin implementation in Q2. The email filled the screen. I remembered writing it. Remembered the satisfaction of finishing something I'd poured my heart into. Mr. Morrison's response, Ethan said, tapping to show Kenneth's reply, was 5 words. "Great work. We'll review soon." A few uncomfortable laughs from the audience. Kenneth's face had gone from pale to red. In March 2010, Ethan went on relentlessly. The company announced the Morrison method. It was described in the press release as, quote, "a revolutionary project management system developed by CEO Kenneth Morrison, building on decades of industry experience and innovative thinking." He showed the press release. Kenneth's photo. Kenneth's quotes about his vision. My name appeared once, at the bottom. Special thanks to our operations team, particularly Barbara Chen, for their support during implementation. Support, not creation. Support. Over the next 15 years, Ethan said, the Morrison method generated over $8 million in licensing fees, according to the company's own annual reports. He showed a spreadsheet he'd somehow compiled. My grandma's salary during that time was... He showed another number. A lot less than $8 million. The room was completely silent now. Rachel was crying. Tom had his arm around her. Around the room, I saw faces I'd worked with for decades, expressions ranging from shock to shame to anger on my behalf. "I'm 11, Ethan said, looking straight at Kenneth Morrison. "I'm in 6th grade. And even I know that when someone creates something, when they work really hard on something for 3 years, when they send you 247 emails about it, you don't get to put your name on it and pretend you made it." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, and I saw him for what he was. Not a confident presenter, but a child who loved his grandmother and had seen an injustice he couldn't ignore. "That's enough," Kenneth said, moving toward the AV equipment. "Wait." The voice came from the back of the room. I turned to see Gerald Tompkins, chairman of the board, standing. He was 75, a mentor of Kenneth's father, and still active in company oversight. "Let the boy finish," Gerald said quietly. Kenneth froze. "You didn't argue with Gerald Tompkins." Ethan looked at the chairman, then at me. "I just have one more slide," he said softly. He tapped his iPad. The final slide appeared. It was a photo. Me, much younger, probably taken around 2009. I was sitting at my old desk, surrounded by papers and flowcharts, hair pulled back in a ponytail, glasses slipping down my nose as I concentrated on something on my computer screen. I didn't remember the photo being taken. "This is my grandma creating something amazing," Ethan said. "She worked nights and weekends for 3 years. My mom remembers because Grandma missed some of her soccer games. Grandma felt really bad about that." Rachel was openly sobbing now, nodding. "She did it because she loves solving problems," Ethan continued, "because she wanted to make things better. Not for money or credit, but because that's who she is." He looked around the room. "I'm just a kid, so maybe I don't understand business stuff. But my mom taught me that honesty is the most important thing. And my grandma taught me that you should always give credit where credit is due." He looked at Kenneth. "So, I think Mr. Morrison should tell everyone the truth, because my grandma is too nice to do it herself." Ethan walked back to our table and sat down, setting his iPad carefully in front of him. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off. The silence in the room was deafening. Gerald Tompkins walked to the front of the room. Kenneth stepped aside, and I saw that his hands were trembling too. "Barbara," Gerald said gently, "is what the boy showed us accurate?" I looked at Ethan, then at Rachel, then at all the faces turned toward me. After 40 years of being quiet, of being reliable, of not making waves, I could feel something shifting inside me. "Yes," I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Yes, it's accurate. I developed the Morrison method, every part of it. Kenneth reviewed it and approved it, but the creation was mine." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" someone called out. "I thought it might be Janet from accounting." I laughed, and it sounded bitter, even to my own ears. "Because I was grateful to have a good job. Because I didn't want to make trouble. Because—" I looked at Kenneth, and for the first time in 40 years, I saw him clearly. Not as my boss, not as the CEO, but as a man who had taken credit for someone else's work and convinced himself it was justified. "Because I didn't think anyone would believe me over him," I finished quietly. Gerald's expression hardened.
I want to share a story about how
He turned
dedication
to Kenneth.
and a clear vision
"My
can truly
office,
change the
Monday
trajectory
morning,
of your career.
9
It started
sharp,
about 10
board
years ago,
meeting.
right here in
He
this
looked at the
office.
other board members scattered throughout the room. "All of you, this needs to be addressed." Then he did something I never expected. He walked over to me and took my hands in his. "Barbara, I'm sorry. This company has failed you. I've failed you. Your work, your innovation, your dedication deserved better than this." I couldn't speak. Tears were running down my face, and I didn't bother to wipe them away. The party broke up shortly after that. People came up to me, apologizing, expressing outrage on my behalf, hugging me. I accepted it all in a daze. Finally, it was just me, Rachel, Tom, and Ethan. We sat at the empty table while the caterers cleaned up around us. "Ethan," I said, "how did you—" "I read all your emails," he said simply. "When I was helping you organize your files, I started reading them. You saved everything, Grandma. Every email, every draft, every version of the Morrison method, with your name on it and the timestamp showing when you created it. But the presentation. I worked on it at night after school," he said. "Mom helped me make it look good. She didn't know what it was for." I told her it was a school project. Rachel laughed through her tears. "He's been so secretive the last 3 weeks. I thought he was planning some cute tribute, maybe a slideshow of family photos or something." "I wanted to do something bigger," Ethan said. He looked at me seriously. "Grandma, you told me once that if you see someone being treated unfairly, you should speak up. You said that even if it's scary, even if people might be mad at you, standing up for what's right is always worth it." I had said that. When he'd told me about a kid being bullied at school and he wasn't sure whether to tell a teacher, "I guess I turned it back on you," he said with a small smile. I pulled him into a hug and held him tight. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for being braver than I was." The next few weeks were complicated. The board conducted an investigation, which was really just a formality since Ethan had already provided all the evidence needed. Kenneth was asked to step down as CEO. He tried to fight it, hired lawyers, threatened to sue. But the evidence was overwhelming, and more importantly, the board had lost faith in him. Gerald called me personally to offer me Kenneth's position. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. "I'm 65 years old and just retired," I reminded him. You're 65 years old with 40 years of experience and a proven track record of innovation, he countered. Retirement can wait. Thank you, Gerald, but no. I'm done. What I negotiated instead was this: a formal acknowledgement that I had created the Morrison method, a payment of $2 million representing a portion of the licensing fees the system had generated, and a renaming of the system to the Chen Protocol. Actually, I told Gerald, I'd prefer it be called the Chen-Morrison Protocol. Kenneth did approve it and support the rollout. He deserves some credit, even if he took too much. That surprised everyone. But holding on to anger felt exhausting, and Kenneth's shame was punishment enough. Besides, I'd learned something from Ethan. The truth was enough. The truth was everything. The industry publications ran articles about it. Consulting firm acknowledges true creator of groundbreaking system. Barbara Chen, the woman behind the Morrison method. Some called me brave, others called me a cautionary tale about corporate culture. I called it closure. 6 months after my retirement party, I was sitting in my garden on a Wednesday afternoon, something I'd never been able to do before. Rachel and Ethan came by for lunch. How's retirement treating you, Mom? Rachel asked as we ate sandwiches on the patio. Strange, I admitted. Wonderful, but strange. I keep waking up thinking I need to be somewhere. Have you thought about what's next? She asked. You said you wanted to do something with all this free time. I had thought about it. A lot. I'm going to start consulting, I said, but only for women-owned businesses or nonprofits, help them set up systems, train their staff, share what I know. Will you charge them? Tom asked. Some, the ones who can afford it. Others, I'll do pro bono. I smiled. I have $2 million I wasn't expecting. I can afford to work for purpose instead of profit. Ethan looked up from his sandwich. That's cool, Grandma. Are you going to call it the Chen Protocol Company? Actually, I said, I was thinking of calling it Second Act Solutions, because it's never too late for a second act. He grinned. I like it. Can I help with the website? Absolutely. I'm going to need a tech consultant, and you're the best one I know. He beamed with pride. That evening, after they left, I sat in my garden as the sun set. I thought about 40 years at Morrison & Associates, about the Morrison method that would now always bear my name too, about Kenneth Morrison, who'd lost his position and his reputation but who I hoped would learn something from it all. Mostly, I thought about Ethan, about an 11-year-old boy who'd seen injustice and decided to act, who'd spent 3 weeks building a presentation because he believed his grandmother deserved better. I'd spent 40 years being the person who kept things running smoothly, who didn't make waves, who accepted what was given rather than demanding what was earned. I'd thought that was strength. I'd thought that was professionalism. But real strength, I was learning, looked like my grandson standing up in front of 100 people with nothing but an iPad and the truth. Real strength looked like finally believing you deserved credit for your own work. Real strength looked like starting over at 65 with a bank account, a new business idea, and a grandson who'd shown you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. Second Act Solutions. Mission Statement. I typed. We believe every woman deserves recognition for her contributions. We believe it's never too late to claim your story. We believe in the power of truth, the value of experience, and the courage of those who speak up. I paused, then added one more line. Dedicated to all the women who built things others took credit for. Your work mattered. You matter. I hit save and looked up at the darkening sky. Tomorrow, I'd start making phone calls. I'd reach out to women I'd met over the years, small business owners who could use help. I'd build a website with Ethan's assistance. I'd write a book about project management systems, with my name on the cover this time. Tomorrow, I'd start my second act. But tonight, I sat in my garden and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride in who I was and what I'd accomplished. The Morrison method was mine. The Chen Protocol was mine. And this next chapter of my life, that was mine too. All because an 11-year-old boy loved his grandmother enough to give her back her own story.